Recording is on.
I actually don't think I got the. No, I was muted. Okay, are we good? So I'm going to do a talk on vision and direction. I do wish it was a little darker.
Your offerings to the gods.
This is a mid-journey generation for the background. The prompt is actually vision and direction. So just for a little fun to kick this off. But if you want to go to the contents, Chris. Cool. I guess it's a little bright today, but I think it's like kind of collecting the thoughts from this trip and really pointing to a direction is what the goal of phase 2 is, and something that we maybe haven't explicitly talked about yet. So I'm going to talk a bit about vision versus direction versus priorities, how those kind of interact. Like why do we need a vision, or kind of more broadly, why do we need this whole kind of pipeline? How do these pieces come together exactly? And then where are we going? And I have a very opinionated talk on what that direction is, and I don't anticipate this to be the answer. I don't think anyone individually has the answer. I think we'll have lots of time to chat about this after this talk and throughout the last couple of days. But the direction that I think that we should be moving in, we'll be giving a little talk on that and a little blurb for each squad. I guess I say ascertaining our underlying goals and pointing to a direction. And then just what's next for structuring from here on out, and how we're going to gather consensus for this phase 2. So yeah, next slide. Vision, direction, priorities all sound very similar, but I think they're very distinct. Vision, overarching narrative, what we've been working on with Lateral these last couple of days. It's very productive. It's like we want to do X for Y for Z reason. And it's like something to point to as an overarching, okay, this is our like top level goal. I know North Star has kind of been a running joke for a variety of reasons now. But that's really what it is, and it's kind of like the fundamental building block to build off of. And of course, direction is the specifics and path. Considering our vision, where do we want to go and what do we want to do? Like very specific actions to kind of point towards. And then priorities is action and execution, kind of what Chris was laying the framework for yesterday. It's like, how do we move ourselves down this path? What do we need to do to accomplish this in the most efficient way? So if we go to the next slide, I prepared the most bare bones and corporate chart you've ever seen. But starting with vision, I think vision steers the direction, which dictates the priorities. So when you have your direction, you understand what you need to prioritize to move along that path. And that creates success by having respect for priorities. We have some feedback. But yeah, next slide. So why do we need all this? I don't want to mimic Lateral too much, but I think it kind of serves as like a crown. Formally guiding our decision making is really the most important part. Why are we working on this, and where does it fit into our broader strategy? Alignment of investors in DXD, contributors through rep, talent attraction. Top talent may not be interested in a perceivably directionless organization. Major turnoff. Dave, you talked about this yesterday, where it's like, okay, well, maybe we don't have some like major long-term players, and maybe that's because we don't really have a defined vision. Like, what are we doing exactly? And then morale booster. If we understand where we're going and we can actually visualize it, we can see milestones and actually reach them as a group instead of as individual teams. I think it's going to make us a lot more happier with the work that we do. So next slide. So that's like a broad overview, and this is my very opinionated direction of restructuring overview, I suppose. It's worth noting that this all assumes that everyone is in agreement with Chris's kind of points from yesterday. Not that those are going to be the solution, but it does kind of support that in a way. So if you want to go to the next slide, let's get some water quick. So I don't think I can choose the vision specifically, but for the ease of this conversation, I want to kind of use what we kind of worked on together with Lateral yesterday to kind of set this up. The vision being the fundamental building block in choosing this direction. And I think it's actually a very good place. Build and evolve freedom for communities. I had lots of drafts that I was running through. Make decentralization accessible. Make decentralization great again was a fun one that we've been joking about for the last little bit. And I think the language specifics need to be ironed out. But I think it's like a strong, concise statement. We want to build a builder culture. We want to create freedom for both ourselves as a DAO and outwardly to other communities, I think, is the strongest part of what we do. And of course, governance has always been at the core of DxDAO. So I just very specifically tells me what action I'm hoping to see from our efforts. Inherently asks the questions: how can we better offer communities freedoms? Is this strictly financial? I don't think so personally. And most important, this vision, whatever it is at the end of this retreat, should be established somewhere on chain, somewhere definitive, so we can point back to it. So again, using this as like a building block for this direction I'm about to go into. If you want to go to the next slide. So direction, and this is the big opinion, and we've been discussing this informally, I think, for a long time, maybe even a little over a year. But it's a decentralized pipeline for communities. This is informally stated, not established anywhere. But creating a suite of products that are fully interconnected rather than a collection of products that can operate with each other, it produces an insane moat. Product reliance, community, etc. We're a leader in decentralization. We're offering accessible governance. How can we utilize it and stay competitive? And just as an aside, I don't think that our governance itself needs to be a profitable instrument. I do, however, believe that you offer a service that's so unique and accessible, and then have this interconnection with products that actually do generate revenue, is how we're going to make revenue going into the future. So I'll have more on that in a second. But native product interconnectivity is the thing. And I think it's like, for example, if you have a treasury that you've made through Davi, it's deployed, you launch a token on Aqua, it creates a treasury on Davi. This should be a process where you're not aware that you're utilizing Aqua or you're utilizing Davi. It should be one streamlined process that works interconnectivity. Average users shouldn't be intimate with each product specifically, but efficiently utilize it with the overarching interface. Would effectively function as a standalone product in our current interpretation, or a flagship service. Chris, if you want to go to the diagram, which is almost unreadable on the screen here. We'll see if we can get it focused. Otherwise, I need to bring up that's not bad. So this is like a very rough draft, of course, and this is all a discussion. But this is kind of like the idea of how does DxDAO make money and where does it come from? And we can have Davi here essentially at the center of our core infrastructure. And essentially, you'll see Davi doesn't have any green lines. This is fees, the general fees, current fees, etc. This exists standalone and provides a very unique service with a moat in the sense that once you've created a DAO on Davi, you'll do so by launching a treasury directly through a token raised on Aqua, which implicates permanent liquidity to swapper. And you have a DAO and you're stuck with permanent liquidity. Stuck, of course, everything is permissionless. You can operate this DAO if you wanted to on the Ethereum blockchain with no worry. But you've created this moat where we're completely open source, yet forking us doesn't make sense because you'd have to fork the entire suite to do this thing. So we're offering services that work within their own ecosystem, and everything is completely interconnected. For example, another way that Davi could make, and I'll bring up my notes so I can actually read it. Another way that Davi can make revenue specifically is like add-ons. Like, what can we add to Davi suite as and these are just questions, of course, but it's like maybe we could have native documentation hosting through DocStudy that we own, so you can directly in your treasury or DAO dashboard kind of implicate and link .docs domain, and we charge like a very, very tiny fee for this. It's like ways that we can provide accessibility, make things very easy for these DAOs to kind of operate. And I just say here, native mixing using MixStudy, built-in GAS directly with DAO interconnectability, like a social layer, and then other minor good-to-have services that are kind of like helping DAOs operate. That could be a way to kind of extract a small amount of fees, but I don't think it's the core piece of the puzzle, right? And it's kind of like this pipeline where, and I say here, those that are coming in that already have tokens, maybe skip this kind of token raise part, and how do they fit into the puzzle of having liquidity on our kind of AMM that is locked in, and then they're locked into our kind of framework. And of course, at the top right, some carrot shilling how it's like, okay, maybe we can offer conditional sales via Aqua, where directly in your raise that you do in your treasury dashboard, it's like, okay, let's focus on if we reach this certain milestone, we'll distribute, whatever. And Carrot is aiming to be super optimized. Maybe that's NFTs. Maybe it's the first people. So there's a million things I think that you could do, and having them all interconnected is really the idea. And please note, this is using our current and live infrastructure, not the implication of any new products, which we'll get into in a minute. But yeah, super overarching idea, and having governance at the core of this kind of product and making them moat around it where you come into this ecosystem and why would you go anywhere else? If you know, I think a good example of this that I'll talk in a minute is like iPhones. They have iMessage. It's not that iMessage is a very unique product in the sense that you're just texting on Wi-Fi, but it's this forcing function that's like, hey, this is super easy. Why would I go anywhere else? Hey, you should try this out. How do we create a social layer that is so simple conceptually that it brings people together into this moat? So if you want to go to the next.
Just Vinky said you could also add a wallet in here too.
Yeah. So like going forward, I think like it's like the direction. If we have this idea of what we want to create and this decentralized pipeline, what can we add to it to improve the experience, improve like this pipeline, and then like this is where you get the fees, right? Davi doesn't have to be a profitable product, but what you slot into it can make Davi inherently profitable by putting these users downstream of that. So if you want to go to the next slide, I wanted to highlight individual squads and kind of how they can fit into the puzzle. So Swapper, hot topic today, Zet. So I say, contrary to some toxic vocal opinions, I think the Swapper team has created an amazing product and core piece of infrastructure related to our product strategy in both our current state and our previous state. I think that Swapper is in a great place. It has some things that it's working on and finishing. But I think that if we choose to prioritize this pipeline as something that we want to focus on, I think there's other stages that are currently more important. But of course, DEXs are like one of the most core pieces of infrastructure when operating with treasuries and whatnot. So it's my opinion, Swapper team should wrap up the 22 roadmap initiatives and then DXDAO to pivot their attention in the interim based on the priority board, which we'll set up through this initiative if it were to be something you focus on. I say integral piece of the puzzle, and then later, and this is what you were saying, Zed, with your kind of second step, maybe we can focus on smart contract future-proofing, UniV2, more automated system like Velodrome, and of course your new idea with the third option that's like splitting this liquidity and kind of like front end. I think that can exist in this architecture as well, where it's like maybe maybe you can connect your DAO directly to the Swapper DApp inside of Davi's governance interface. Fill out the like as you would a normal user, and it just prepares a proposal that you submit to your DApp, right? And this is kind of the front end that routes to best liquidity, for example. So that's the thought for Swapper. If you want to go to the next slide, DXGov, ascertaining the governance 2.0 is priority number one. Continue forward in that regard. I think we're on that path already, but I think once that governance stage of the pipeline is operable, we have Davi prepared, people can use it, and governance 2.0, of course. I think pivoting focus to the social elements of DAOs and how they can interconnect and create community, not only within the DAO, but within the DAOs and the ecosystem makes a lot of sense to me. So I asked some questions. How can DAOs natively cooperate directly within our pipeline? Ross, of course, mentioning governance as a service and how those DAOs can interconnect directly within Davi. Native bounty boards, maybe the Shopify of DAOs, you create a DAO and you have the option to sell things directly through the interface, and that's somewhere we can take fees as well. And this is why I say, like Apple uses iMessage as an ease of use concept, forcing function to use their phones. How can we adopt that mantra while retaining open source and decentralized values? So again, super simple conceptually, but it's such a strong moat and forcing function. And how do we capitalize on that? And I think it's like this is the best way to do open source code in such a way where it's like it's open source, you can fork everything, but this whole ecosystem what makes everything great. So if you want to go to the next slide, I want to quickly talk Omen. It's almost an aside from this. It's available and accessible now, but looks dead. As a medium or even longer term priority, I think that we should relaunch Omen, focusing on existing media, which would be low effort. I actually anticipate that this process would be one or two developers over the course of 1 or 2 months, because we have prepared, but not yet utilized, updated branding, updated landing page, new UI UX, high quality explainer video, and a mascot, all of which is completely ready and just effectively needs to be implemented. So I'll get more info on this on Friday. I'm doing a talk, DX Voice, operational challenges and why prioritization is important. So we'll go into that a bit more, but I do think this is something to maybe think about in the back of our minds, that Omen is still usable now, looks dead. We can do this relaunch and kind of support it passively, and maybe longer term, if it becomes a piece of our pipeline, we can have some kind of interconnectivity. If you go to the next slide, Nimi, maybe hopefully not controversial. I think Nimi is extremely exciting. The first DXDAO product to gain traction, but the kind of split priorities are a bit complicated. I think personally the NIMI team should fully disengage from DXDAO as soon as possible over these coming months. Of course, there's the proposal passed on chain that implicates, I believe it was 6 months, 3-ish months ago, of like this kind of split allocation. It's my personal opinion that the team, everyone here has a very obvious passion for NIMI. You guys are going to the conferences, shilling it super hard. You're excited about the work that you're doing. You're creating these templates, and I think momentum is super powerful. You have significant attention. You have shoutouts from major players. And I think also, of course, for like the more DXDAO angle, if NIMI is successful, DXDAO is inherently successful, of course, with the large grant and kind of helping do these split time allocations for the contributors, C grant and split time allocations. I think it's vital that you guys capitalize on this now, and I don't want this to slip away from you, in my eyes. And I understand that there's underlying, responsibilities that you guys have at DXDAO. But I think it's in the best interest of both DXDAO and you guys as individuals to disengage from the core DXDAO processes and work full time into the NIMI squad. And I think this is just like it's the time, right? And I think I don't want the time to slip away in the same way that Zed, for example, has said, pissing into the wind and, oh, I need to finish this, I need to finish that, and then the opportunities come. So I want you guys to make this a focus, of course, opinion. You guys can do as you wish, but that is my thought for NIMI. To the next slide, and then minor/no change. I think Carrot is heading in a super right direction, despite having a very low to no team. Finalizing the product, getting into an operable stage is kind of priority number one. And then when we can kind of ascertain financial viability and making it work in our pipeline, can we interconnect it directly with, say, our governance or like token raises or something? If that makes sense, maybe we need to expand the team, get more devs on board, etc. So if you want to move ahead to operations, Contributor X, I think that they should have more agency over common HR functions. And this is where like the operations side is more focused on kind of Chris's points from yesterday. But it's like, I asked a couple questions. How do we let Contributor X better guide proposal processes? And this is kind of the question of the squad level requires proposals. Maybe Contributor X can kind of do a collection process and review along with the squad leads, something that gives them agency over the actual control of the workers and making sure that they're all comfortable. How can Contributor X facilitate punishments or maybe even rewards for inactions that are cemented on chain? Right now, there is no system for that. And I mean, not to call any attention to any specific situation, but we've seen a couple where Contributor X is very vocal about a problem that might be occurring, and it's impossible to take action. And then later, just a thought, maybe some sort of coordination or functionality directly with the councils, if that's the path we decide to go. Maybe there's some kind of push-pull function there from the contributor side and payments. And then the second, and maybe even the most important thing, contributor camaraderie, I think, is a big thing. Happy hours, fun events, something as simple as like game or trivia nights. I say virtual pizza party went, but it's like, I think we get too wrapped up in what we're doing a lot, and we argue a lot. And it's hard to remember sometimes that as soon as you come here, the vibe is totally different to like working at home and being super stressed and like, oh, I don't even know if these people like me. But I think we're all pretty close here, is my interpretation. Hopefully you guys don't hate me. But yeah, I want to see more of that, and I want to talk to people more, not just doing work. So I want that to be a focus for Contributor X. And then Treasury, I think it's like continuing to push towards on-chain actions rather than multi-sig. Of course, great work with Dave on the CowSwap stuff lately. And developing a more robust, maybe automated Treasury reporting strategy in the sense that this kind of NAV calculation is a bit unclear. We don't know exactly what NAV is. Of course, we can find the numbers, but it's difficult to track. And there's a lot of questions about it. So how can we automate that, I think, is an important facet of Treasury going forward. And this is the more personal opinion, but pursue riskier capital allocations, especially considering we're in a bear market. I think, does DXDAO, as someone working in the weeds of this technology, understand what will be successful over the coming years? And if it does, can the contributors help guide it towards that success financially? So, this is as simple as the compartment engagement that Chris and Dave, I think you two have been working on. But I think it's as complex as like allocations designated to opportunity for the larger piece of the Ethereum-based treasury, non-runaway treasury, that the community can kind of collectively vote on, maybe post-governance 2.0. And it's not just the collective knowledge of contributors, but of course, DXD holders that are financially aligned as well. So I think there's opportunity there if you want to. Next slide. Yeah, and then DXBiz, DXVoice, which I put under operations because I don't think it makes sense as product. But I think both squads face very similar issues: communication and delegation. Like, what exact power does DXBiz or DXVoice have? What can they control? And what is the expectation? Are very big questions that I think are lost in communication between squads very often. So, for example, these squads should have far clearer expectation communication between product teams, and often those two things don't align, which leads to troubles down the road. DXBiz, DXVoice should have a much tighter integration with product squads all throughout their life cycle. So you imagine from the creation of the product at the very beginning, all the way up to launch, go-to-market strategy, etc. And maybe this is some kind of coordination with the councils, just as an idea to throw in there. And I think if like that problem can't be solved, then why should DXBiz or DXVoice exist? And instead, those engagements should be broad responsibilities to squads on an individual level, in a sense where it's like, okay, we need marketing support for Swapper. Maybe that person just becomes a part of the Swapper team. I don't think this is the best path forward personally as the lead of DXVoice. But the question is, if we can't solve those communication issues and we continue to have problems, why should these squads exist in this capacity? So that's kind of a broad thought on DXBiz, DXVoice. And I say us specifically at DXVoice, we're focusing on our own path to profitability and kind of squad purpose. I'll talk a bit more about that on Friday. More on Friday. If you want to go to the next slide, Chris. Yeah, and then operations minor and no change. Keep in mind that this is considering the changes that Chris said. So really, there's a lot of change operationally, but this is kind of just from this perspective of like the actual operation. And I think it's like further focus on automation of all functions, and this includes DXC token, of course, a large undertaking, but not a new idea. So that's why I put minor. And then continue education, aiming for 5% of all contributors on governance. And this is still because we kind of informally have a small allocation to governance, making sure we protect the treasury, making sure we understand what's going through. But apathy exists because there's an extreme amount of contributor proposals and it's impossible to understand what's going on in them. How do I vote on a proposal if I don't even know the person, for example? So there's a large amount of apathy that I think will be removed from this process of having squad-based budgets. So the squads individually get to determine those weights, and instead of focusing on every single contributor individually, I think all contributors should be able to take a look at these budgets and snapshots of the report cards and understand what's going on and whether or not you support or are not in agreement with the certain priorities. So if you want to move on from there. What's next? That's kind of the fun bit. Hopefully I didn't ruffle any feathers. But phase one didn't contain many specific actions, I think. And Dave pointed this out where it's like, what did we actually accomplish? It's less so on-chain actions and more social delegation. Like, how can we collect ourselves and push in this direction? So I say setting social precedents for off-chain actions. And I imagine phase two is actually going to be pretty similar. Really, it's going to be like having a solution implemented overnight is nigh impossible, especially the topics as complex as that we're talking about. I said, instead, we want to affirm how we fix our issues and kind of ascertain pushing towards that, which I think is, in the proposal text, this is basically the implication. It's like we need to figure our shit out. Then phase three is executing upon that shit. So I think the important thing is reaching consensus on the direction, not explicitly stating where we should be in 3 months. And this will occur naturally through process, discussion, etc. If you want to go to the next slide. I'm interested in further discussion to approach consensus collection. There's been some comments, especially how phase one was mainly a forum thread with off-chain consensus collection via polls, and then that kind of flowed through discussion. Is there a better way of doing this? Maybe not. But I think the forcing function of creating this kind of yes or no environment was necessary to prevent inaction, and it actually was successful in the sense that not everyone agreed on every point, but we kind of discussed and collected what we were okay with, and overall we're happy with the outcome of the proposal. So forcing functions deadlines, of course, being we should have something submitted on chain by X date. That's a good forcing function. And then blanketing discuss conditions that aim to reach an environment with majority support, yes, no, and why. So I think it's like collecting all of these main points and actions, namely the governance stuff that Chris is primarily focused on, and more of the direction/strategy stuff that I'm kind of focusing on. How do we put them in a bubble where not everyone needs to say yes to everything? It doesn't need to be perfect, but put it in a bubble where we're happy with that direction collectively and kind of start to execute on it over the next 3-4 months. So October 31st this year, I think it's like 2 weeks from now. That's the arbitrary deadline passed on chain for the phase 2 signal proposal submission. So that's basically when we're going to be. Next week is going to be the time, effectively, to discuss all of the things that we've been discussing here and how we collect them into one formal kind of method. And yeah, reach a consensus. And I'll just say I'm very happy with this process, and I think that before this process, it was very toxic environment. It was almost impossible to work, and everyone's been super respectful, and I'm really appreciative of the environment we have here. So yeah, thank you. This is another. It's the prompt. Vision and direction. It's like a going through the mountains. So it's like future kind of image. Yeah, let's chat. I think we have open discussion soon, so we can chat about this until there's nothing, and then I'll probably split off and continue to talk it in a more focused group. But if anyone has any questions, comments, thoughts, of course, all appreciated.
Okay, I have a proposal. I propose to maybe have a group talk now of this what Keenan just presented, maybe for like 5-10 minutes, and after that, what we propose is that each one of you, I mean not each one of you, but every one of you that wants to talk about some specific theme that concerns to what you just said or to anything that happened during these 2 days would like propose a space to talk about it. Okay, so we will write that subject title in a piece of paper, and you will say, okay, I will be talking about this on, I don't know, on the beach or here or at my room or whatever. Okay, so and we will have like, I would say we would have like 40 minute blocks of talks. Okay, and then you can we will make like a grid of talks, and you can go to whatever talk you want. Even though, actually, if you're in one talk and you feel you are not comfortable there because you're not providing anything or because you're not taking anything and you want to go to another one, you just go to the other one. Okay, so that's how an open space works. An open space is a social technology. A guy, which name I don't recall now, but he used to attend to conferences, and he realized that most of the good stuff was in the conversations that occurred outside the talks, like in the coffee room or somewhere else. So this is like a way to formalize informal talks. Okay, so you've been having those a lot, I guess, during lunch or during dinner or whatever, but nobody knew about that talk. So this is a way of saying, okay, explicitly, I'm going to talk, or I would like to talk about this. Whoever wants to talk about this, come with me, okay, and join, okay. And as I said, if after a while you had a different expectation of that talk, or something is not working out as you thought, you just use your feet and go to another one, and nobody gets offended about that, okay. It's one of the rules of the open space is that you can move freely without hurting egos.
Everyone looks very hot and tired. Maybe I'm new because I'm not as much because I'm new, but I think we can talk about what Keenan just talked about for 5 hours, and there are some things we should all talk about together, because like at lunch we had a really valuable conversation, and I was wondering why that didn't come up I'd only listened to the second half of the Swapper presentation, but none of the stuff we talked about was talked about when the Swapper presentation happened. But Keenan just highlighted like a bunch of the stuff we actually just talked about at lunch, which would have been awesome if everyone was listening so we can revisit it. But like, how can you talk about Swapper if you don't talk about the suite of products that DXDAO can own and put together? And I didn't hear anyone talk about the suite of products until Keenan just did now. Like, Swapper alone is not that interesting of a product. There's like 100 AMMs. Dodo and everyone else are killing themselves with 30 people trying to fix how their AMM is the best. But like, Swapper was never going to be the only product that DXDAO had, and it's not that unique. And we've had some success because we've created some new things like farming, and we've had some relationships with partners that we've gotten to use it and stuff like that. But like as a suite, it's an awesome asset to have. Like, so the question is, how much more awesome do you need to make it, and how much do we have to maintain it? But like, if you talk about the suite of products, you need some place to put liquidity, right? And so that could be Balancer, that could be Uniswap V3, that could be Uniswap V2. But like the whole idea when we were like continuing Swapper was like we we're also supposed to have Aqua, and you mentioned Aqua on there as a current product we have, but we don't have Aqua.
It's like a current snapshot of like what we have.
We don't have Aqua though.
We
wish we had
don't
Aqua.
have Omen either, and I kind of
What?
It's just like stuff that we've talked about.
Yeah. So like this like path of give someone a grant,
want to go back to
help them with like help them with governance, whatever, help them figure out what to do, give them an investment, then actually help them launch a token and give them a governance tool in Davi, put the liquidity from the token generation event on Mesa into Swapper, and then incentivize it with Carrot, and then throw on Omen somehow, which is
it's like
we don't know
Omen.
how to do. But like, well, so Carrot is actually a subset of prediction market. So Carrot, most people in the space think that Carrot should actually be built on the Gnosis conditional token framework. The experts do. We decided to build it separately because it's easier and the ERC20s, so that's okay. But it actually is prediction market. Omen, Carrot is prediction markets. So like it actually ties everything together, but that's where the value comes in. Like Keenan just said, is that you have this suite of products that all are working with each other. And so just like people were asking at lunch, like, what do I think of Swapper? I'm like, yeah, it's a good asset we have. It would have been amazing if we launched it like 1 week after we had the idea, but we can't go back, right? If we launched it like a week after we said we were going to make it, it would have been the sushi swap. It would have been massive. Like we had this idea long before anyone else, but it just took a really long time. So it's okay. It's a good asset to have. Like, should we give up? Should we sell Swapper? No fucking way, right?
Yeah.
Should we keep investing in it? Maybe, but very smartly. But we also need the other stuff, I think.
The Google engine came a lot later than the Yahoo engine, which was the engine at that moment, and now it got kicked off. So you can still do it. I mean,
but they built a complete new engine. This is a fork of Uniswap.
Okay. Well, and sushi.
Technologically.
I mean, we've added a couple unique things, but
Uniswap V3 is already like.
Yeah,
It's
so maybe we need to make
I was just criticizing the Google
right?
example. Like Google engine is like a completely new software. We just forked something. Like we're not doing the protocol layer innovation,
Which we also talked about at lunch. Like we've never really built. I mean, Federico's a unique scenario, but like most things, we've never really built from scratch, right? But do we need to? If we have people that know Solidity enough to like take all the good shit, even with Davi, right? We're taking Open Zeppelin. What if we take what if we let someone else build the zero knowledge voting and we just take their shit and bring it into Davi, right? We don't have to build everything ourselves. So we can like package things together, especially when you have a suite of products. But like we need the devs clearly, like obviously need to be. We compared it to like taking like a nuclear warhead from China and like bringing it to the US, and like you better know how to fucking handle it and not fuck it up. But you don't have to build it from scratch. We just need to take it from, it's all open source, take it from someone else and put it into where we need it. Yeah. And so like right now we don't have enough Solidity devs that we're gonna build stuff from scratch, which is fine. But also at lunch, I'm just referencing a lot, like some of the stuff we talked about at lunch. It's like, what are your favorite things you saw at DevCon? If DXDAO disappears tomorrow and you're dev or a non-dev, like which project do you see at DevCon and you're like, I'm gonna go to that project and I'm gonna go ask them if I can work with them because they're doing cool shit. Everyone should have an opinion on that and then like bring it to DXDAO. Like everyone should spend way more time out in other communities and taking all their good ideas and bringing them back into DXDAO to like help form this even better suite, I think.
I got lost in everything you talk about. I mean, you started with a suite, and then you talk about.
Did anyone else
and you talk about...
did you understand anything I said?
Yeah. I mean, I thought you talked about a suite of products. What did you not understand, Augusto? You're sitting right next to him. Let's pay attention.
Yeah, you were talking about the suite of products, then you talk about how did we fork or not fork Uniswap? Then on DevCon, that we should be approaching other communities and gather their ideas.
Yeah.
And how are all those things related to our suite of products that you want to mention?
Exactly. So, because everyone here is saying, "Oh, what do you think of Swapper?"
What I don't know. I don't.
Everyone's asking what-
Everyone here said that.
people are asking each other what they think of Swapper, right?
Because we talk about Swapper today.
But at the Swapper presentation, no one talked about the suite of DXDAO products.
No, we didn't. We
That's
talk about
my point.
Swapper. We talk about Swapper.
How can you talk about Swapper without talking about what Keenan just talked about?
This is something. This is something that we mentioned about how all the squads are working alone and they are not connected. That we are just starting realizing that other squad success is my squad success, and we are all our DXDAO domain, which is, I think we kind of mentioned that in Swapper, and we are just starting to realize that a lot of squads are working siloed and alienated, and this is a great example of things that we can do that we can start working together. But I think we kind of just realized that this year because
I mean, I've been in on the DXDAO suite of products. That's like the reason I joined, right? It's like we can create decentralized infrastructure for the world that is not like owned and operated by like VCs, right? And that's the whole idea is there's going to be like not a ton of decentralized exchanges, lending protocols, all of these different things. There's not going to be like a bunch of different designs, right? So you're going to have a couple different ones. So the question is, instead of trying to make Swapper successful because it does something that no one else has done, the reason it's successful is because it fits in the other product suite. And the one thing I would add, Sky, is dog fooding the products with DXDAO, right? So DXDAO can already or should be in the middle of this and be using all of those products as a product suite to help build them, right? And so we're already doing this with Carrot, we're already doing this with Swapper, right? And I think we could keep doing that more. And that is, DXDAO does it, and then we have groups in the DXDAO ecosystem that we do it, where they're investing in different products, are using that. But I guess I think it's always come down to the DXDAO products.
we just say Swapper, but what's up with Carrot, with Omen, with Mesa, I know Aqua, because we are just taking Swapper as an example, but now we are just in Swapper. What about Carrot? I mean, is Carrot following all this idea? Is Carrot going to be designed to fit on this?
I think the main reason why we're mainly talking about Swapper is because it is the only product that DXDAO has live, right?
It's gonna complete.
It's the only product we have live that we can all use, right?
And to answer the question, yes, I think that they all, maybe not Open haven't thought of anything specifically, but they all kind of fit in their own rights. I mean, you can imagine built-in functionality through Carrot when you're launching, a token via Aqua or Mesa. It's like, what kind of grant could you give out? Maybe if you reach a certain milestone, you distribute certain rewards, or you have partnerships where the partner tokens give at least people. Like, this is functionality that's built.
But then also
right
for smarter farming.
yeah, exactly.
Farming.
And we have DIY farming, and that can be built directly into your treasury dashboard. It's like, hey, this is the pair token. This can be shown when you're visiting the DAO, and you can see it as a campaign line. Okay? They created the campaign directly through the treasury dashboard. As a community member, you're looking at the DAO, and you're saying, hey, there's a reward campaign. Maybe I should stake some liquidity. That is fees for us. That's money.
The problem is, like, we have a gun to our heads. We're like between a rock and a hard place. There are some people literally bullying us. Actually, that's a mild form of bullying. And
They're literally what?
bullying.
Bullying.
Who?
And
Who?
Who is bullying us?
Connor.
Who?
Connor, spicy soup. You know them.
How are they
Yeah,
bullying?
they are the ones who invested. I mean, we are here because they gave us money. So, I mean, they are investors, right? So,
Like, don't let someone put a gun to your head.
yeah.
If you think that, like, I don't think they got a gun to my head. I'm making decisions off of what I think is best for DXDAO.
Yeah.
I take their advice, right? But I don't think Zimna has.
Both of you for listening. Yeah. Thank you.
Sure.
But that's it, you stop. I mean, what you were going to say?
I'm not gonna say it anymore.
Okay.
I'm not gonna say anything.
So I do push back on saying that someone is bullying DXDAO because like I don't think that's true. That's the only thing. I'm happy to hear what you're saying, but I don't think anyone's bullying DXDAO.
So this suite of products and how we can interconnect all these products. This where is it the direction where we want to go technically? How do we want to start connecting our products and squads to work together and help each other?
I think that's my interpretation of course, how we direct our vision and how we build off of that vision. I think, as Chris kind of said, if we want to develop products and infrastructure to decentralize communities and free them, we are a community that started in this way, and we know what's best for that to happen. Right? Like we know the best path, and like Chris said, we should be directly in the center of this. We're planning on moving to Davi contracts, to the best of my knowledge, and like interacting with this pipeline, and we'll know from just like what we need to operate with. It's like, okay, this could be needed, and like maybe we can make fees by like adding this feature that kind of helps the user or the DAO kind of operate better, right? Yeah. I think that's like the core underlying like direction, because we don't know what we're doing. We're kind of splitting off and like funding individual products. It's like they're great, and I think they can still exist aside from this. But the core mission, I think, is supported by this kind of pipeline.
Yeah, and then like with DXDAO at the center, again, like I think there's also a lot of really cool governance tooling that needs to be built that only we know about, right?
Yeah.
And that will be used by other people. But like this kind of going back to conversation yesterday, where I think building for DXDAO and then using that as a model to sell to kind of others and get others involved in that, I think is really important.
So the hardest thing, because we had this vision has been laid out. This was laid out a year and a half ago. The hard thing is actually getting all of those pieces complete, because we had limited resources, so we had to stop and we had to dedicate. And so how do we to accomplish that? I think we need to get more people.
Yeah, and I think there's two things. One is I think that a lot of us have known about this for a while, but I've talked to an equal amount of people that have no idea that this was the idea. The first thing is that this wasn't.
We haven't. This thing was out there like a year and a half ago, but we haven't talked about it in a very long time.
We just
because we were focused on like
we haven't even written it down. I think it's like formalizing this in this phase two. It's like, if this is the direction we want to take, how do we refine it in such a way that we're happy seeing? If we follow this path, this is where we will be in 5 years. We don't have to know exactly what steps to get there, but like we know what direction we're going. We know what we want to do, and we know we want to be like the center of it, right?
Yeah, and I don't even know if we need to hire people versus how can we find other pieces, maybe investing. Like I think, that's another way to do it. Maybe we don't have to own all of a different project, but just like finding the different elements of this.
Could be partnerships, could be anything. And on the note of like we need to hire, and I don't think this was framed well enough in the first proposal, but phase 3 kind of identified as originally framed, I suppose, as like a cut. Like we need to cut back. That was not the purpose. The purpose was to cut back where it immediately makes sense. Evaluate in phase 3. If we take this direction, we know where we're going. We know we need to focus on right now, and we need talent. I don't think anyone, DXD holders, rep holders, no one will be upset about hiring new talent. It's like we know what we're doing with it, right? We know the direction. We know what fits into the puzzle. If we didn't know, then I think we should be cutting back in a lot of places if we don't know what we're doing, right? So probably not framed perfectly in that text. There's a bit of confusion on that, but that was the purpose of phase 3. If we need more talent, we need more talent.
How do you measure? Well, there's if we have that entire thing, there's like some hypothetical expected return that you make, like, and people want to you want to know, if I spend $1 today, it's going to lead to. If we build this, we're going to have dollars in the future. Like maybe it's not in 2 years, maybe it's in 3 years, 4 years, 5 years, 10 years.
Yeah.
But like, how do you prove that this actually leads to value?
Yeah, I think proving it is difficult in the sense that the main driver of that revenue comes from the success of Davi and how we can interconnect those communities. And that's why I think the social layer is an important facet post when we have all this stuff operable. How can we attract a community and ecosystem around this product, and then build tools that attract revenue off of it, right? So in a sense that it's difficult to calculate because it's based off the metric of success of like the core flagship product. But yes, it should be thoroughly scrutinized research. We should be looking into this if this is the direction we want to take. The important thing is that we kind of say, this is a good idea, this makes sense. We can actually get revenue off of it, and let's explore what that looks like.
So, all of those things exist in the space today already.
Yeah.
So I can just go make DX Prime.
Not the arrows. I mean, some arrows doesn't exist, right?
Well, individually, yeah. Individually, all those pieces exist. I
But
can
they're
just
not.
go tomorrow,
Yeah.
make DX Prime,
Yeah.
and I can take all the pieces. I can take UMA, Sushi Swap, let's just say Moloch DAO.
Yeah.
I can literally create that with other projects in the space using their products right now.
And I think the hard part, and maybe what is lost in translation, like the original vision was to create a suite of products, maybe akin to Google, where you have the Gmail, my open Gmail, and then it links to my Google Drive or whatever. I imagine this as like a different flagship product that has all of this going on under the hood. So when you're visiting whatever this
Davi.
is, let's just call it Davi for the sake of simplicity, you're automatically working with Office contracts directly in the Davi UI.
Yeah.
You don't leave Davi to interact with this contract.
So-
Right?
Can you say?
So, I don't know if you guys listened to my talk, but I actually said, I think the problem that Sushi, Dodo, and Swapper did is build all of these tools. Even though they were connected and we need them, and we think the ecosystem of having all of these tools together in one place is good in like on paper. I think in the end, simplicity and protocol won, right? We see Uniswap is like Uniswap doesn't build other stuff. They like they're first mover and they have a good enough protocol, which people go back to. Even 1inch, they did their own liquidity and they failed with that, and they stuck with the aggregating, right? Dodo and Sushi, I saw their new designs, and their new designs actually focused only on the swap hooks. They removed everything else from the menus and everything else, and just trying to keep it simple. I think this ecosystem thinking is good if you have the users. I think Apple can do it, Microsoft can do it, Google can do it because they have the users.
Yeah.
I don't think you do that to get the users. I think that's maybe our mistake here.
I think the big difference is I don't think Swapper's user is an individual trader. I think Swapper and all of these product suites are DAOs. Those are the users that we're trying to acquire and building into that. And for that, I do think you need like a product suite. All those other ones are like really hyper focused on one thing and delivering it to an individual like user. And I think the key distinguishing factor with DXDAO is that we're a DAO, right? And like that's the thing we have to leverage. And it's building all of these that are tailored to DAOs. To give an example, I think for like Sushi, I mean for Swapper or Uniswap, whatever you want to say about a DEX, none of those DEXs can work with DAOs, right? Literally, like we're the only ones I think that have infrastructure that allows a DAO to provide liquidity on a Uniswap V2 fork, right? And that's just like the first thing. I think going forward, you're going to need tons of different types of tools to manage the treasury through AMMs that are specific for DAOs and not just for general liquidity provider. And so I think that's just the key difference there.
And the thing to add as well is the social layer. I think DEXs aren't inherently a social tool. You don't coordinate with anyone to trade in a DEX. You go and trade in a DEX, usually very alone and crying, like some wine or something.
To in line with what you're saying, if the purpose stays as you wrote it, it's like creating and evolving solutions, let's say, for communities freedom. So it's not for individuals. It's for and a DAO as a community. So it goes.
Yeah. And it's more of like that's I think the competitive advantage, right?
I mean, we saw another DAO do this pivot, right? Prime DAO went from trying to do something for normal users, and now they do only DAO to DAO tools, if I understand correctly, right? So what we're saying is we gonna pivot to be more the target group is DAOs or
I think essentially that is the case, but more importantly, like this is something that we've always had in the back of our mind and didn't have established anywhere. I don't think it's a severe change of course.
I think Swapper's biggest user is DXDAO.
that's sad.
But that's the reason Swapper has fees is because of DXDAO's liquidity.
because of liquidity.
Right, and that's what I'm saying. You're either a trader or you're a liquidity provider, and that's what I'm saying. I think Swapper's big user that they have is DXDAO, and obviously, like, you can have other users involved in it, but like I think Swapper should be tailored towards the liquidity providers that are like coming in, and
Can we do both?
Yeah, I think there's room for like the core underlying protocol to exist, condone to this overarching mothership style, flagship product, and still exists on its own. I mean, it's really a front end. Like Swapper can exist in its current state forever, and nothing would change.
I just have one big doubt from the 2 years I've been to these out. Building great shit doesn't automatically give you users, and I just even if we come up with a great plan here, I'm still doubting how the users will end up with us.
I think it's
Well, what is the difference now versus back then?
just as a thought.
Yeah.
What would you consider DXDAO's moat right now? And what competitive advantage does DXDAO have to draw in market participants, to draw in people?
Things
Right.
that people don't care about, which is like decentralization.
Right.
Yeah.
So the real moat that we're establishing is Davi as a core underlying governance infrastructure. And you've been to the same conferences I am. Everyone you talk to is very interested in DXDAO. It's like, okay, can I use this? Right? We have this grip where it's like DXDAO is governance focused. DXDAO has been doing governance forever, and we're building frameworks that are. I mean, I haven't seen any other DAO framework that makes things digestible in the way that they presented yesterday. For example, I played with the beta, of course. We're creating a service that's accessible to anyone to come in and easily not only operate as a DAO, but create a DAO and lock themselves into this ecosystem by providing them services. So you create a moat by saying, you can make a DAO here, you can do it anywhere, you can operate on, through Etherscan, whatever you want to do. But this framework is so tightly integrated with the actual projects that come and launch with us. DXDAO has probably a piece in that of making them successful. Maybe there's grants beforehand. In the same way that the liquidity is locked to Swapper in like this very basic example. And why would you leave an ecosystem as a community if you have locked liquidity of significant size and you have native DAO environment that is easy to access and anyone can participate in, right?
I mean, this kind of sounds like the conversation we had 1.5 years ago about Aqua being the entry to Swapper, right? But Aqua never finished, and we were there with the farming contracts and did some farming with no users, right? We didn't really. We actually created the farming contract because of Aqua. That was the plan, to have that ecosystem. I mean, we finished the task, but Aqua didn't really finish their task.
Successful, and I think there is a key difference in the fact that it wasn't really formalized back then. I mean, we knew we were in the weeds and there was problems, but like, if we were like, okay, our goal is to get this part of the pipeline complete, so these two pieces can interact in one product. Do you think it would have been maybe different if we knew that, and then we wouldn't have spent time on other things, perhaps?
I mean, I don't know.
I don't know either.
I'm just getting reminded from this topic from another topic. It was the exact same. I'm not saying this is wrong. I'm just saying. So,
I think that goes to the accountability and like underlying frameworks that we're trying to solve as well, right?
So I'll ask, if we fail getting DAOs to use Davi, then we don't have any other like entry for DAOs or users into this ecosystem, right? That's the door. So if you fail with that, then the rest falls.
I mean, I think that is I think that would be the bet that you're making, right? Because I think that's an easier bet than saying you're going to compete with
but I think
50
Davi
others.
is replaceable, just like Swapper is replaceable. You can already do everything Davi does with tools that already exist.
Yeah.
So that's just another building. That's another piece of the puzzle. We can replace Davi with another governance platform.
Yeah, I mean, I think the goal would be to build things around Davi, and again, I think these are around treasury management that lock you into whatever. It doesn't have to actually be Davi; it could be a couple different ones, but like you have to have tools that allow DAOs to use their treasury and like having that like tightly integrated.
I guess one issue is most DAOs don't care about decentralization. They're just multi-sig, so they can already LP where they want or stake.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that will be in the future because that's like, I mean, I think this is a bet also on like what's going to happen the next 5 to 10 years, right? And like, I mean, users, like I know users aren't going to be here for the next, year or 2 years, whoever knows the next bull market, but it's like, what is the framework that will be successful in the future, assuming like, yeah, Web3 kind of expands. And I think on the DAO front, I think that's already kind of changing. You see a lot of conversations about like multi-sig treasury stuff. ENS, for example, is like a real DAO, and they just put out their proposal for treasury management, and they're explicitly wanting to have non-custodial stuff. And I think the only way this stuff scales, like if you're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars, like a multi-sig is not going to want to do that because there comes with all sorts of like legal stuff. But I agree that that's what it is like now.
Yeah, I guess in that way we're kind of going up against Zodiac as well, right? That's like a more decentralized multi-sig.
Yeah.
They already have the app store with like hundreds of different apps into
Yeah.
it. It will be tough, but yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think Zodiac is a good, yeah.
Snapshot also is
Yeah.
the same thing.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah.
Is there a way to get early feedback on the concept or to test it somehow? Or
Well, I'd love for it to be ready for you to use right now. But
no, I don't mean on the kind of on the UX UI level or something. But
Yeah.
I mean,
Just concept-wise.
yeah, exactly.
Try to raise money.
Like any DAO who would be
If
potentially.
if this thing can't raise money, then that's the problem. You were saying it like at lunch. Any product that DXDAO puts money into should be able to raise money on its own.
Yeah.
So like, yes, DXDAO already raised money, but like if the current investors don't think this should get more money, that's also a problem.
Well, let's get feedback from 1KX.
Yeah, I think it's a vital stage of like these next 2 weeks where we have like a discussion period. If this is the path, or if there's some other ideas, of course, this is my personal interpretation. It could do
Pretty sure
anything.
Delphi Digital.
Yeah,
proposed this 2 years ago.
that's true.
Exactly.
Yeah.
and so we have individual puzzle pieces of this concept already, like Swapper.
Yes.
I do not have an understanding about how many percentage of the whole piece is ready or not. Like, just to get a feeling of what we're talking about.
I think it's like
As an effort.
the core piece of this product is essentially Dave, right?
Yeah.
And it's like Dave works by being able to create a DAO and like interact with it. Everything else I see as like a building block on top in my eyes, or this like round moat where you build inside the moat. So I think actually probably a better Ross question on like when Davi's going to be ready. But I think we're going into beta. Like it was supposed to be a week ago. It was a little bit delayed. But like that core underlying piece is kind of there, and then it's like how do we expand upon that and push forward with it, right? Which is why this is like obvious. This is like an obvious thing to me. It's like we're like there, like we have the steps in place to like execute on this, and we've known somewhat about a path like this forever. Never been established anywhere, and we never really have talked about merging it into like this super DApp, but like we're close, right? It's not like a foreign concept that we're going to need to spend a million light years to get to like an optimal state, I think.
This guy's going on having, like, why are we building this stuff ourselves? Like, all these pieces exist.
Yeah.
I guess probably something we should revisit when we're looking at additional pieces to add to this. Yeah. I think it's awesome that we basically have all of these parts and we can map out. It's not low effort, it's going to be big effort. Like, we want to actually do the UX and actually connecting this all together.
Yeah.
But like, we have all these pieces right now, and it's all stuff that we know internally. It's all things we prepared and like can take for granted.
Yeah, and to reiterate, this is, as Ross has said, everything that we know of and or have launched and or have retired now. I don't think this is it. I think there's a lot to build off of this. But this is like what we can do right now to build toward. Maybe this is like a year, maybe this is half a year. It depends on, of course, the development time and what.
I think the other part though, I probably talked about this previously. I think DXDAO's probably in a better position now to do it, both with these products and how we're trying to operate as well. But hopefully, I think we can do a better job with it. By formalizing it as well, not having it just be like an idea. If it's right away, it's too good.
Yeah.
Well, I think a big weakness to that whole situation is what Augusto was saying earlier, is that we were all individually siloed, and each little squad was trying to prove their own little success, instead of us realizing that unless we make Swapper collectively make Swapper successful, or DX Voice or DX Business, unless we help each other be successful, we're all fucked.
I was hoping that like that structure would probably help us understand that.
Yeah, how do we work together? Like, let's say, okay, have a problem. We have to work together.
Well,
How?
at least now we talk.
So now at least we have the arrows right between and okay, you know that's something. There is something that I cannot read it, but
And
there
this
is something that we
was
can.
made in like half an hour. So like this needs work as
Yeah,
like an
yeah,
actual
yeah, I
product
know,
diagram. But like this is like the start. Like we can work with this now. I think.
Yeah, I mean, like this is a digital product, and there's a kind of a cookie cutter process for building a successful digital product.
Yes.
Or Formula 2 that's we can show you nice successful steps how to do it and get early feedback. Have different squads working together and so on and so on. Like this is all possible. We saw a nice UX UI talk at DEFCON about exactly that. This is not starting with development or some smart contract. This is about getting a product market fit. This is about getting feedback about
Yeah, we never thought of
stuff,
that.
and so on and so on.
It started. I mean, the years, 30 years, it started on my head. Let's fucking do it. I mean, when we are for
I know.
soccer, I can make this smart contract. Yeah, let's do it.
But sometimes, not always, but sometimes the best way is to start with a prototype that's only usable in Figma, and you ask some people, is this something we would like to use? And if the answer is no, then don't waste time on development.
Exactly. Yeah, but we haven't done that.
We could even like have a Figma prototype for the whole suits. Up and running
Yeah,
in
yeah.
months or something.
That would be a cool idea, actually.
Yeah, this was
Okay, in 3 months, maybe.
Yeah, it's-
No, what is-
You created yourself some work.
This actually
I'm
happened.
going to be a pirate, man.
Dirk. Yeah, actually, someone came to us. Delphi Digital came to us with a mock-up of exactly this, and we said no. I said yes. I thought it was a good idea, but we said this is a bad idea. We didn't want the ecosystem. We didn't want the products to be connected. We wanted different products with no connection to each other. That was the answer 1.5 years ago. So a lot of changed, I guess. I don't know if you guys remember that.
yeah, I mean, I remember it a little bit differently. I think it was like Omen. I don't think Omen fit with Swapper.
I mean,
That was what they were saying.
Omen needed liquidity because Omen needed that exact token to bet, right? And we said, hey, what if we connect Swapper liquidity to it, so you can swap any token to bet, right? You don't need to have UCC or ETH,
Yeah.
which was a problem because people said, hey, how do I bet? Do I need that specific
Yeah.
token? So we said, hey, let's connect Swap to that liquidity. That was one example from what I remember. So the idea is not new, and I think we got a hint from like a big player, and we kind of ignored it. We're back here. Yeah.
Yeah, I think it's not a big problem to change your mind.
No. But just I don't know. Maybe if someone is good of making money comes to us and says, "Hey guys, you should do this. We should like if you're not bigger experts, then maybe we should listen to this." I mean,
Yeah,
no, that's what we are saying.
Yeah.
We're saying
Yeah. I mean, do you remember who said no?
So yeah, maybe we should take this to people that is good with money and say, "What do you think about this?"
And what if we go back to the fish and they tell us that it's not a good idea right now?
Yeah, maybe it's not a good idea then.
Okay, that would.
I mean, maybe I'm just saying. And I think this is also a discussion we had. Should DXDAO bring in investors into DXD, like they can buy DXD, just so we can get that money expert perspective. That is not technical. It's not feelings based. It's not people based. It is like, hey, our numbers, our analysis says this. That's it, right? So if we get that perspective, it's different from our perspective.
I suppose that's what Chris and them are proposing with those councils, right? Something to
We're bringing in that one of those.
that
Yeah.
extra kind of like perspective
they
that is
probably
not closely related to the DAO, but kind of related. Right?
Part of it is they want governance. So they're like, why would I buy DXD? It doesn't give me governance.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah, because of
Christopher's
the
main problem.
Yeah.
He already bought the DXD because he thought it had governance.
users.
One
Who cares?
something that we need. We have been talking about.
Most people that bought DXD when they bought it, they actually thought it had governance.
Token name is DXDAO.
Yeah,
DXDAO token.
And something that we have been talking is profitability and sustainability, right? So for that, feel like we have been working on something very careful that is purpose and vision. Okay, we want to make this come true, right? This is going to be our objective. This is what we want to do. We need money to do that, and we want to make money with the money we have and to be sustainable. So there is where I think these money thinking people can help us, right? But again, just following the purpose. We don't want to. We don't want to be profitable. We want to be sustainable, right? Or no? That's my question that I still have in my head from everything that we have been.
I think if DXD holders could answer, they would say we want return of our investment right now. But they waited 2 years. I think we had our goal, and for now it's like, hey,
The goal wasn't 2 years, though. The goal was 2 years, no.
No. I mean, there's no.
I mean, most projects that 2 years in are not making money. Most we know are losing money.
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
We didn't lose money.
We
actually made
survived
money.
and we made money. So I think we did
But
pretty
what's the
good.
difference between profitable and sustainable? I don't know. Sustainable means we just make enough to cover our costs.
Yeah, different word.
Anything extra, you're giving back to DXD holders anyway. So
Huh?
the DAO itself will be sustainable because any extra profits go to DXD holders.
You know,
Or
but
to
I
the
was
exile
also
environment.
asked if we should be profitable or sustainable. So I don't know what the.
Why not both?
Yeah, maybe. I mean,
It's like a threshold,
Yeah.
right?
we will be sustainable if we're profitable. So let's just fucking call it.
Yeah,
profitable.
no.
End it.
Oh, okay. But we want to be profitable to be sustainable.
The
Yeah.
harder question is,
Okay, profitable to be sustainable.
Then you wouldn't stop at sustainable.
in order to become profitable, what do we sacrifice? Because for 2 years, we talked to this at lunch too. For 2 years, we did no tracking. Now it's a bear market, and we get some pressure that we need to actually profit right as soon as possible. And now we're putting tracking in. Like, what is that? Like, literally, we didn't do it for 2 years, and now just because some people are like, we need profit, we're putting tracking in.
Yeah, just
Should we put more stuff in? Like, should we sell all of our data to Google and make a ton of money? We could do that.
Just ask what sustainable means.
No, that's
I didn't put no tracking anywhere, bro.
Think before you add. Also, will they pay us for that? I think they will pay us.
We don't have enough users, but
Yeah.
like, where do you draw the line, right?
I think it's more research. Finding out that Fathom exists.
No, we knew there was tracking 2 years ago.
We
But
didn't
there's-
know
there's-
that.
Fathom
I think
exists,
there's
yeah.
another-
Tracking.
But
We
there's
didn't know
another
that.
case you can make
There's
for
similar
tracking
ones.
private, which is improving the product.
I have a question.
There's another case you can you can make for tracking.
It improves the product.
Yeah.
A question for the group.
Yeah.
Our informal core underlying value has always been decentralization first. I think that's effectively been our vision since Genesis. This is almost a pivot in a sense where it's like we're not starfire in the decentralization. Does anyone see an issue or like would it be beneficial if we were to introduce elements of centralization to help this process along and or kind of like make things easier to use from a user experience perspective?
What does it mean for the merge?
So just one perspective from Nimi's perspective, we actually said to each other like, let's not go the deep tower route. Actually, I mean, we need to have users, and if something is decentralized and gonna make it much harder for us, and we're gonna fight and piss against the wind, we're not gonna do it at the beginning. We're gonna get the users, we're gonna get the money, we're gonna get what we need to have the tools to make it successful, sustainable, and decentralized.
You lost the user for giving control of the website to a third party.
just
He doesn't like IPNS.
again because I want to
to go for us right
But,
now. Maybe
like,
we'll
I can
win
already
you back-
make a web page.
We will win you back in
Okay.
half a year.
just
Okay?
Yeah.
I'm just reading some chat because we have some people here. So, Connor, there's a bunch of protocols. There's 6 months that are profitable. So he's not sure if it's a cop out to say that we're not. I'm not actually sure. Connor, I'd love to know which ones you're talking about. And then Venki, we need to look for practical decentralization. And then Adam says about 80% of Nimi's stack is centralized. So just so comments in the wind.
Plenty of the conversations at DevCon, lots of the founders all said that decentralization is the aim, but if you cannot make it completely, do not sacrifice the end goal for the immediate goal. Use the centralized service that you have if you have to. So if we have to, we have to.
Yeah.
I didn't came to the exam to.
I'm not saying that we must do it. I'm just saying that
I think it's like Snapshot. Snapshot started like fully centralized, and now I know they're building for a long time. It hasn't been out yet, but they're like building the decentralized version of their product, right? But they have all the users at the beginning already using it and stuff, and then they gradually like building out like the more decentralized and like trustless version. I think that's what Wayne is referring to, right? They start with it. Yeah.
I think the goal of some of them were saying, but it's not. Sometimes there isn't a service that can give you what you need in a decentralized way.
I think the goal of this whole ecosystem is just decentralization.
Of course.
The goal should still be like, oh, we can onboard this many DAOs using this ecosystem and make them more decentralized. Or decentralized.
I like what Adam said, 80% of the stack is decentralized in a way that our core infrastructure, Gavi, I imagine will be completely decentralized, 100%. It's an add-on to the built in. They require the decentralization to help it operate by the user experience.
Did you say 80% centralized or 80%
Centralized. He said centralized.
80% centralized.
Yeah. It's the 80-20 rule, guys. It's okay.
You guys are up tonight.
And we've incubated it was, so we have 30.
Now it's 80.
I think like the social platform is a good example where like we are getting like using Orbis. Orbis has a lot of centralized points right now. Yeah. Getting the right assets super difficult. Orbis. There's some parts. We're not going to have the health part is a decentralized name. So it's kind of with smart contracts.
Yeah.
I think
There are, I think we all know, and recently also want to say this, like, the core infrastructure needs to be decentralized.
For centralization is a need for the exam.
Yeah.
I mean, I think I was listening to Phil Dine from Flashbots, and so I don't know if like kind of the recent controversy over Flashbots, especially post merge, right, is that everybody is running MEV Boost as an Ethereum client. I think it's something like 60% of validators, and then they're also using the Flashbots relay to actually as part of the block production process. And that is a super centralizing force, right? You have everyone kind of using this one piece of software and then using this one relayer. And the talk was basically all about how Flashbots is going to decentralize, right? Not because they're doing it because they like, idealistic. It's because I think two reasons. Like one, the Ethereum community is bullying them to decentralize, right? Like they're up there and they're kind of had some success. And it's like, well, if you stand for these things, like you need to decentralize. And second, they're doing it because it's the only way that they can actually keep moving forward because of regulatory risk, right? And I think everything that's going on in this space now, like decentralization, it's just like a necessity for the end regulatory kind of area. So I don't see it like almost just like a choice. We can do things that are centralized, do things that are decentralized. It's just like in the end, it's like the defense that you kind of have to do. And I think Ethereum is a shining example, I think, of decentralization, right? Because like it's a self-correcting thing. It gets centralized, and then people are like, no, we need to kind of become decentralized.
Like Flashbots probably couldn't have built a purely decentralized version first, right?
I mean, they weren't really centralized until they got centralized because of their success, right? It's kind of like what it is more than anything. Like because they became so popular and widely used. That's like why they're like, because it's more of their centralization threat to Ethereum, actually, I should say. Not so much that they themselves are decentralized. Yeah, that's true.
So floating this among a whole bunch, like not just like 5, but like 20, 40 different stakeholders. And if they think if they like the idea, what if they don't like the idea, get their feedback. And
my personal opinion is that the current idea is that there's no idea, and that this is a massive leap for us. in the sense that it's like
Massively.
there's ideas, but like it's not like nothing is concrete. And how do we put a direction? I think phase 2 is like we want to say what direction we want to go in. It doesn't need to be perfect. We can workshop it, execution along the way. Maybe this changes along the way. Maybe we reach phase 3. We're discussing with people. 1KX, of course, being a great example. It's like this isn't going to work. Like we're probably going to need to take a step back and think, okay, well, what can we do differently? But I think in the interim, it's like this has kind of always been our thing. This is a way that we can integrate it with our current infrastructure and make a moat that can make us successful.
Yeah.
So how can we capitalize on that?
And I think like the vision document, like if we have that, that's precisely what it can do is like, hey, like what does everyone think of this and get that like feedback in itself. And I think that would be valuable putting, a whole bunch of ideas on how they interlock. I do think like this is all really, really hard stuff. Like in general, if we consider this a startup or whatever, like lots of startups fail independent of what you're working on because you're betting on like a market and you're not sure if that's going to be there. So that's there. And then also like crypto is really hard. And so like we're inherently going to be making a bet. And this is like when Zet was talking like before, I'm like, I'm not sure if like this is DAO, if it's going to work for DAOs. Like, I don't know. But like we have to find some entry point that we have some competitive advantage if we're going to make a bet. And so I think thinking very hard about like what that entry point is and making it as like specialized as possible or focused as possible, I should say.
Also, another underlying assumption, like I've been assuming, and not everyone here, but everyone has their own opinion, that like DeFi, like I'm expecting DeFi to like 50, 100x over the next 10 years or something. Like, if I don't think DeFi is going to grow, like people building stuff in DeFi is kind of a waste. I also think there's going to be tens or hundreds of thousands of DAOs. Like and we can do this very soon if we have it, but every repo on GitHub is going to be its own DAO. And that's just, there's 30 million users on GitHub. That's, I don't know how many repos there are, but there's probably 30,000 at least, right? Like, you can do that to every like community in the world. Like, there's going to be hundreds of thousands of DAOs, and if they can use this easily, and they get all these things, this isn't for like thousands of DAOs. This is for hundreds of thousands of DAOs. And if you don't believe that, then like we're also wasting our time.
I don't believe that because just doesn't add up. Like hundreds of thousands of DAOs, like how many people are in those DAOs?
Every community.
2 in each.
No, so every repo. How many repos are on GitHub? Millions? No, millions. Every repo on GitHub can be a DAO in the next 2 years.
Yeah, but like, and then what? To commit, you have to do like an on-chain proposal.
No, they can all manage money together.
No, it's going to be, I mean, this is going to be companies. How many companies are there in the world? There are millions of companies in the world, right?
Yeah, it's already going to happen.
I'm just telling you about the GitHub example.
Oh, yeah.
What do you mean? No, not the repo. I'm talking about every repo can manage money. Every GitHub, every open source repo is going to be a DAO, like in the next 2 years.
That's pretty interesting in the security and cryptographic point of view. And now we are signing our commits cryptographically, and that's something very powerful. And we can see some other companies like Radical, right, working on that. So just like you give the example on GitHub, it can happen on other areas, and it would be great if we are ready for that. I think that saying that every repo is going to be done it's like an utopia, but we can see it all. I mean, for us, it would be like very useful. For example, let's say Swapper and DFGov and Carrot, each guild has control over their repositories, and they can do ENS deploys with code that they have hosted on GitHub, and they can manage their treasury there and link pull requests and issues to their contribute to their proposals. So again, there is a lot that can be done there, and we are just brainstorming about it. But
it's almost a DAO service aggregator. I mean,
it's a DAO service, and here we have been talking about governance as a service, which is again very very hard. As I said, doing other stuff is hard, but no one is also working on that.
Yeah.
Right? Who is?
What?
But one thing, sorry, but I hear that what you're saying is many GitHub repositories and so will convert to a DAO, and that would be only
It's
the
additional. They also get a DAO. It's not they convert anything.
no,
You
but
also get a DAO.
yeah, but that would be only in the software industry. But I mean, it's
So you know what Clubhouse is?
it could be
Twitter
anything.
Spaces?
Anything.
Every Clubhouse and every Twitter space
Yes.
is also gets a
No,
DAO.
but I mean, let's say I'm a group of designers or medicals or rescue
Yeah.
team or whatever. Like that. I mean, I can make a DAO of that too. So
Yeah.
it's actually the
Millions.
amount of DAOs
Right,
is
millions.
like infinite,
Millions.
millions.
Yeah.
For sure.
And I could,
Yeah,
The,
and I,
the good thing about the GitHub repo
no, I
Yeah.
want to give my external
Trillions.
I'm really into that
yeah,
as a user. I mean,
okay, your company.
yeah. You're a DAO. You're a DAO. You all get DAOs.
That would be that.
Well, I mean, and I think it is far away. Yeah.
Well, yeah,
that could happen too. Yes.
one DAO to rule them all, and the DAO can be on the top.
They're talking.
Database is built to do DAO,
That would be
DAOs to
awesome.
do DAO governance. Another DAO.
DC now. This maybe so maybe from my point of view, like all of these things sounds really great on paper, and we talked about them. I would love to see like, hey, this year we're gonna do like focusing on
Mhm.
onboarding this amount and this group, right? And
Yeah.
and we can even measure it really early, like, hey, we can like onboard.
We need the tools.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so, and then we also, if we could crunch the numbers, like, is there a profitability in this? Like, not only like do we onboard them, are we happy with users? Is DXT holders happy with just users? If we just have 50% of all the Git hub DAOs, are we happy with just having the numbers? If that's the case, and then good, we just start onboarding. And then how do
We
we?
start with the numbers. Yeah.
So,
If you get 50% of repos using Davi, we can make revenue.
You can, yeah.
yeah. So I don't know. From my
I mean,
point of view, it would be nice to say, hey, we're gonna actually target these groups.
Yeah, I think
But
it's
those could be OKRs.
well. I don't think DXDAO should be trying to like I don't think DXDAO is going to be the one that gets like this early casual like DAO person. Like I think we're kind of building the underlying infrastructure, and then there'll be lots of like Web 2 people that kind of come and are more about like the outreach component. The same way, like I don't think DXDAO has like deals with like fiat payments or something like that. So I imagine that other groups will be that connector, and I think DXDAO is much more like the underlying infrastructure.
Why doesn't we? Why do we not go directly to those that needs it out? Like we
Because that's just like that's a very hard business, and I think it's like a Web 2 business. And like we could bring that on, and maybe we could put that up there. But I think it's like a better bet to just build the underlying infrastructure, knowing that people are going to come eventually.
So what I'm hearing is it's not maybe I'm wrong, but what I'm hearing is so our target group is Web3 communities and other that already did something in the wrong way, and they will come to us if they're doing the right way. Is that correct?
No, I think we're just not. I think we're like honestly like 5 years away from this stuff, right? Like, and it's like a long time. There's so much to be built, and I think it's like a little. I don't think we should be trying to focus next year on like acquiring users in that way, because I think this is like a much longer play, and that's why I think we're still at the infrastructure stage.
Who is our target group? We talked about Davi as the entrance.
Yeah.
right, to this ecosystem. Who are they?
My
Yeah.
interpretation as like a baseline and what we're doing right now is easy to digest governance for people that are familiar with crypto. So that can be NFT communities, that can be anyone. The idea is that you can start a community either through a token raise, or you have a community you can plug and play directly into our contracts. The idea is to make the pipeline really easy. I think in the future, like this is the future, right? This is why we're here, or I don't think many of us would be here. How do we condone to that kind of long term? But I don't think we start with that poll. I think it's like you have to kind of condone and make the structure for a more targeted group, build that up, and then push upwards.
Yeah. And even the most targeted group is DXDAO itself, right? That's the one that you can build for that, and then for these others. So I think you can have targets next year, but like that's not necessarily, I think, going to be the users like 5 years from now. That is the reason that this is worth doing, because I think DAOs are going to expand a lot.
the step we're taking up is still like you have to understand crypto. I think there's going to be so many
Yeah.
demonstrations with help of the DAO before some normal users start using Ethereum or even this ecosystem that is like, I don't think it makes sense to spend so much time.
Yeah, I think you start there, and then what can we add to this to connote to this wider group and make like the user experience even easier? We have it super digestible for people that know crypto. What's this in like 5 years?
A wallet.
A wallet. Do we work with like Tally or something to make a super
We
easy
can
friendly
fork a
wallet?
wallet and or support the wallet that is going to be specially designed to onboard new users.
Also to create DAOs. That's great.
Also to create DAO.
Because that is if you already have a DAO, perhaps with 2 users don't have the DAO yet and don't know how to do it.
So this whole space is moving very fast though. Like we actually already need this today, and we actually need NFT governance, but you don't have to lock up your NFT. So we need all of that. We need it today. Otherwise, you're gonna miss it.
And I want to bring a sense of urgency. I don't think that will take 5 years. I think this will be here like in 2 years, tops.
So this is happening in the next 3 months. So
Yes. So
Tell me a bunch of normal people with DAO.
Yeah.
yes.
You think that's going to be here in 3 months?
No.
GitHub repo. GitHub repo.
No. I'm talking about adoption, massive adoption. I don't
Yeah,
think
I
it
mean,
will
one of
take
the
5
themes
years.
at DevCon I heard from a lot of people was like an honest disappointment about where Ethereum is at in terms of real world adoption. Because like, if you look at Ethereum now, I mean, it's great. Like, I think we all like understand its power. Like, I'm not really sure what it's doing in the real world right now. And that's Ethereum, like the blockchain itself. It's still a ways away. So I would just be kind of skeptical of if Ethereum's not there yet, that like DAOs will be there
Mainly
in 2
because
years.
The real world needs cheaper, faster, so we need real L2s.
Yeah.
So we're gonna need Tave on mainnet is not actually that interesting. We need Tave on mainnet and on L2s.
The next part is we go
Both.
to that.
On the layer two,
Interoperable.
I think you transition to a system where you don't even let the user know what the network is.
Yeah.
It's like so
Oh.
for everyone's easy.
As long as it's on a
And then-
L2.
Yeah,
Where am I?
Not other
Venki has a good comment
You wanna
here, which I
vote?
think is also he says we need DAO chains.
DAO chains.
Yeah.
I disagree. Is Adam on there?
He was, yeah. Yeah. Yeah, he is.
Is Adam on there?
Yeah.
Hey, tell Adam layer 3 is our future.
Can
Layer
we-
3 is
can
the
we move
future.
On this, we are going to DAO chains now. I think we're going too deep.
It's not stuff we're going to implement.
Yeah, I don't think it's a step.
Adam says bullish on L3s.
But yeah, I guess
It's all in L3.
Yeah.
I
Oh,
guess
would you have
next-
anything else? This was good. Yeah, that was good. Good discussion. Yeah.
so hopefully this provides a good kind of framework. I think probably something to discuss today. Maybe not tomorrow. Hopefully have some fun tomorrow. But on Friday, a good thing to reflect on.
Okay.
And then I think it's like throughout this next week specifically, it's not saying this is where we want to be specifically, but like this is kind of a direction we believe we want to go in, and then working on how we execute that and what the specifics of that are in the next couple of months until the end of the year. I think that's the most important part. So I will likely be facilitating that discussion this coming week, having some kind of soft consensus mechanism. Of course, maybe that's a forum thread, maybe that's something a little more interesting like Snapshot. But we'll chat about that next week for like the actual next steps. For now, please discuss. I really like the discussion here, and we can talk more about it throughout the night. Take it away.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Well, I think
Sorry to
the original plan is like gone, but this was much better. So and it was like intense and long and hot. So let's make a break.
Yep.
And go swim and drink and whatever. And it's like 5, I think now.
4:40.
Yeah, 4:45. If you remember, we were like planning to have like short bliss talks before dinner. So I would like to give one of them today. So I would like you to be at